I'm Aaron Vaccaro, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast.
So I want to tell you a little bit about our main sponsor for the episode. Script Anatomy is a screenwriting school that gets incredible results. In just 4 years, their students have won 58 fellowships, half of them at major studios. In 2020 alone, Script Anatomy won 4 out of 11 fellowships at CBS and 3 out of 8 at Warner Brothers. Why? Because the instructors are all working writers with current credits. They teach a consistent, tool-based program, and they treat students like emerging professionals. To get your writing career started, go to scriptanatomy.com. My name's Gray Jones, and you're watching the TV Writer Podcast, partner of Script Magazine. And I'm so excited to have with me today Script Anatomy instructor of multiple courses, Aaron Vaccaro. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Gray.
Very cool. And we will talk about your Script Anatomy stuff in the latter half of the interview. But first, I want to get to know you a little bit. Tell me about your background.
Well, I'm one of the rare native Angelinos that went into this business. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, Woodland Hills specifically, and I kind of got the film and TV bug fairly early. My grandfather was an actor, and he was in the original Our Gang, Little Rascal comedies from the 1930s and 40s. And he was also in some Shirley Temple movies and was kind of the first wave of child actors, if you will. And so I was kind of enamored by that. There were a lot of cool, production stills around my grandparents' house. And so I just became very, infatuated with the business and the whole idea of movie making and making TV. And so that actually led me to not want to become a writer, but to become an actor. I wanted to be like my grandpa. And so I was a total theater kid throughout middle school and high school. I did all the musical theater and, the Grease and the, Captain Hook and Peter Pan. Yeah, I did a bunch of it, Little Shop of Horrors, and I loved it. I was, naturally felt very comfortable on the stage. I don't know if it ran in my DNA, but really enjoyed it. And then when I was graduating from high school, I decided, well, do I want to live the starving actor life, right? Is that a route that I want to go down? Do I want to break my Jewish mother's heart? And so I decided against that and decided, okay, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to study pre-law. So I'm going to go become a lawyer, make my Jewish mother very proud. Only that's not exactly what happened. Obviously, if I'm here today talking to you, I did not become a lawyer. I took a film studies class my first quarter at UC Santa Barbara, where I went to college, and just as an elective, just as something to kind of, get a departure from the intensity of the pre-law classes. And I fell in love with studying cinema and studying television. And from there, I decided to double major. And then as college went on, I was definitely taking more of the film and TV off ramp than I was the going towards law school and all that. I still took the LSAT, and that was kind of the final nail in my decision to whether or not I was going to go into law, because I did not do well on the LSAT. And so I thought, well, maybe that's fate telling me that I'm not destined to be a lawyer. And I'm kind of glad I didn't go down that route because I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, and most of them are pretty miserable. So that's kind of the pre-working background, is that I graduated with a double major in law and society, which was the pre-law major, and film studies, and then moved back out to LA to try my hand out in the business, which was a little weird having grown up in LA. Kind of moving back, my mother had moved out to Palm Desert where my grandparents lived, and so I was kind of moving back out to LA as a stranger a little bit. I didn't have any place to live. It was like coming back to my hometown but not having a home to come back to. And I think, in hindsight, I think it probably was for the best, because it allowed me to kind of have to really be nimble on my feet and figure stuff out. And but yeah, I didn't know exactly. Even then, I had done a lot of creative writing and whatnot in my past, but I wasn't sure that writing was what I wanted to do. So I came out, and my first job was actually got from a friend or a fellow student in my film studies program at UC Santa Barbara. It was a post-production PA job on a TV movie back when the network still made those. And I quickly learned that I did not want to work in post-production. The idea of editing was just not something that seemed particularly exciting to me. And then that's when I really started to kind of delve more into writing and thinking like, oh, maybe this is more up my alley. And my boss on that TV movie that I was working on got hired to be the post-production supervisor on the Ghost Whisperer pilot, which is dating myself, I know. And from there, he knew that I was kind of leaning towards the writing sector. And so when that show went to series, I worked with him on the pilot as his post coordinator. But when it went to series, he put in a good word for me with the showrunner, got me in as the writer's PA, and that kind of started my trajectory towards the writer's room.
Very, very cool. So, and you actually were an assistant on a number of shows around that time, right?
Yeah, too many actually. I spent 8+ years as an assistant.
Wow.
Predominantly starting out in post-production, like I said, and then from Ghost Whisperer started kind of my involvement around the writing department on shows. So I was the writer's PA on the first season of Ghost Whisperer. Then I got promoted to writer's assistant the second season, and then left to go be a writer's assistant on 24, and was there for a season or two. Then the writer's strike happened, which then kind of leveled everything. All the momentum that I had going as far as being able to jump from show to show was kind of shot. And during that time, I had to go back to waiting tables, which I hadn't done since college. Just had to, do what I had to do to make ends meet. And then after the writer's strike happened, I decided I was looking for anything, right? And I went back to being an office PA, which was a major step backwards at that point, having been in the writer's department, going back and being a production office PA. But again, I just kind of wanted to get back in the game. And it kind of worked out to be a good decision on my part, because I became an office PA in the comedy space, which kind of became where I belong, which is the sector that I felt most at home. And so that was on The New Adventures of Old Christine. I was the office PA on, oh my God, I can't even remember which season, but one of the middle seasons of the show. And then the next season, which was the last season of the show, I got promoted to writer's assistant. And then I had just been promoted to writer's assistant, and then the show got canceled. And so, it's a lot of this industry is the stars aligning in the right way, and so it is what it is, and it definitely perfect storms have to happen a lot of times to have these jobs, to make that next leap to the writer's room. But from there, I worked on a slew of other comedies. On I Hate My Teenage Daughter. Mike and Molly was kind of the big one. That's a whole ordeal unto itself. I left Mike and Molly, then came back to Mike and Molly. It was not the most enjoyable work environment. So that was the reason why I left, and I had another job. I worked on Wilfred as well as a writer's assistant and script coordinator. And then I decided to come back to Mike and Molly because there had been forward mobility with the previous writer's assistants. They had gotten staffed on the show. And so I decided to sell my soul a little bit, which, everyone has to do a little bit of in this industry. And I decided to come back. I asked for a big raise, and I got it because I was one of the few people that left on my own accord and wasn't fired from that show. And it was worse than ever when I went back. It was just more toxic than it ever was. And it was, things changed in terms of leadership on the show at the end of the season. And the number 3 writer on the show got bumped up to showrunner. And he knew that I had been, working really hard, improving myself, and, pitching and, doing the things that a seasoned writer's assistant does when, they've earned that right. And he staffed me on the show. And so,
Very cool.
The long journey, 8+ years later, I was finally in the writer's room.
Well, I do know a writer who went 10 years as an assistant before finally making the jump. It's
a common misconception that I think a lot of writers or aspiring writers starting out don't understand. They go on Twitter and they see people that, have been writing for a year, or they just wrote their first script and got staffed on it, or whatever it may be. And then they get staffed. It's, the road is different for everyone. And there's no that's always something I tell my students too, is like, there's no one path to becoming a TV writer, right? There's a multitude of different paths, and you got to find the one that works for you and the one you have the most luck at.
So you had observed many writers' rooms. What was it like to finally be on staff?
It was kind of I felt very vindicated, right? It was, it's hard being behind the computer, taking notes, jotting everything down, and on certain shows you have a showrunner that welcomes the writer assistant or script coordinator to pitch when you pick and choose your battles. You don't pitch all day because your main job is to type everything down, get everything down and into the notes, and make sure you're paying attention to your job duties. But there's other showrunners that you are not allowed to talk at all when you're behind that computer. You are basically a dictation machine, that treated almost to a subhuman level. And so, I had both experiences, and it was, I think what was nice about finally getting to be at the big kids table, so to speak, and being in the writer's room, was that it was with writers that I had a familiarity with, right? I had already worked with them on previous seasons of Mike and Molly, and so it wasn't going into a whole new room fresh, and I think that really helped the easing in to, because there's a lot of nerves and there's a lot of anxiety. There's, the imposter syndrome starts to creep in, like, oh, am I really cut out to be doing this job, making this gargantuan amount of more money than I was making as a writer's assistant? And so having the comfortability of having a supportive group of writers on the Mike and Molly writing staff that I had worked with previously really eased the transition. But yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking when you finally get that opportunity, and you got to kind of know the politics of the room. Like there is a definite pecking order to writers' rooms, not a blanket statement, but in general, most writers' rooms are, based on your title, is kind of based on how much you should be talking in the room. And, Chuck Lorre, who was the kind of didn't run Mike and Molly the show, but ran the Empire, he was definitely one of those, if he was in the room, if you were not a producer level or above, you probably just kind of bite your tongue a little bit and just kind of observe, and that was totally fine. It was kind of, it was a great learning experience, so I was okay with it, and you kind of get to watch a master at work, right? Because he wouldn't come into the room every day, he'd come in like after a table read and to help, do the rewrite after the table read, and you'd watch him work and you're like, oh yeah, I get why this guy is the maestro of sitcoms, right? I mean, he can just come in, see what's not working, fix it, do a 2-hour rewrite on it, and an extensive rewrite sometimes, but still do it in 2 hours, and everyone's going home for dinner. And it was kind of something to behold, for sure.
Wow. So, and then from Mike and Molly, you went to Superior Donuts?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't staffed on Superior Donuts. I just did a freelance script over on Superior Donuts, and was actually script coordinating back on that show too. So there, after Mike and Molly ended, again, another thing people don't realize is that you think you just go from show to show. Once you get that first job, you just, that job ends and you hop right on to the next one. Not always the case, right? Yeah. So I actually had a decently lengthy gap, and so I was, fearing that I was losing my grip a little bit on my contacts and the people that I knew in the industry. So I took the humbling step of going back to being a script coordinator for a season, and luckily I had good showrunners that gave me and the other writer's assistant a freelance script on the show, but it wasn't easy. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it was it's hard to have been at the big kids table and then have to go back to the kiddie table and to kind of be treated like an assistant and not getting to be a part of that collective. So I stayed on Superior Donuts for one season, and then I decided I was going to recommit myself to getting staffed again, and then going back to school and doing those things.
So, and you went to Team Kaylie after that?
Yeah.
Or did you school first?
So school happened in between there. I decided, I had started my master's program at Cal State Northridge before I got staffed on Mike and Molly. And then when I got staffed on Mike and Molly, I decided to put that on hold, obviously, because Mike and Molly was my priority. Yeah. And then after Mike and Molly, I think I went back and went back to finish my MFA, but it took like another year or so to finish it. And then after I graduated from there, I actually took on a writing partner, And shortly after that, we got staffed on Team Kaylie over at Netflix.
Very interesting. That's not that common to take on a writing partner sort of later in your career.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all about pivoting, right? It's all about, if things aren't working, what can you do to help help move the ball down the field, right? And so I felt that, I still wasn't getting a lot of traction as a writer, and for whatever reason, a lot of the contacts that I had either weren't getting shows picked up to series or weren't selling shows, and so I didn't know a lot of the new crop of writers that were selling shows, and so I was a little bit on the outside looking in, and so to make myself a little bit more marketable, and I partnered up with another writer who was also looking to make herself a little bit more marketable, who was a solo writer, and having a writing team is always going to be more attractive to a show, right? Because you're getting 2 writers for the price of 1.
Yeah, very, very cool. And so how's that experience been so far?
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, my writing partner is also an instructor here at Script Anatomy, and this is a very lonely job, right? When you're not on a show and you're not in a writer's room every day, but you're sitting at home working on your specs and going through the writing process. If you don't have a writing partner, it can be very lonely. You don't know if what you're working on is truly working until you send out that draft to the writers that you trust to give notes on. The beautiful thing about having a writing partner is that you eliminate that, right? You have each other to bounce ideas off of. You can you have a litmus test sort of to have somebody that you can see if something's working or if it's not working, and not spend a week or 2 or a month going down one road that proves to be a dead end. You can kind of nip it in the bud a lot sooner, and it's just nice to have somebody to collaborate with, and you each have strengths that you bring to the table, and then hopefully you kind of complement each other well in that sense. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And so together you staffed on Team Kaylie?
Yeah. So we were we together staffed on Team Kaylie, and that was an amazing room. We had a blast on that show, and unfortunately it only lasted 1 season, which was truly heartbreaking because we really had a lot of fun working on that show, and it was my first foray into kids TV, right? Because it was a kids sitcom, and I was a little nervous not having written anything in that world. Kind of surprised that was the show that we got staffed on, considering our writing sample at that point, or I think our 2 writing samples at that point were adult comedies.
Oh, yeah.
That we were kind of, and dark cable, dark comedies, right? Like had some raunch to them, had some adult subject matter to them, and so was a little surprised when the kids show was like, yeah, come aboard on our staff. But now that I've worked in kids TV the last few years, I've come to find that that's actually fairly commonplace, is that a lot of these showrunners of kids shows are so tired of writing kids TV and doing that all day, every day, that when it comes to staffing, they actually want to read adult comedy writing samples to kind of see something new and different. And also, not a whole ton of writers out there have kids sitcom samples. Right. So I think, it's also probably what's at their disposal.
Very cool. And now you did get your MFA in screenwriting, and you've also done teaching not only at Script Anatomy, but some other places as well. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, prior to Script Anatomy, I did some guest lecturing. I taught a little bit at AFI and a couple of the community colleges around LA, and I went back to CSUN and did some guest lecturing as well. And just to kind of, dip my toes in the water. My whole thing with teaching is that I had always envisioned, when I first embarked on that program, when I first got into the program, I always thought of that as that was going to be my third act, to kind of use screenwriter terminology, feature screenwriter terminology. That was always going to be, when I got burnt out on the hustle and the grind of the writers' rooms and was surrounded by all these bitter, jaded sitcom writers that were complaining about their pilot deals and whatnot, that I could go into academia and I could work with excited young people that were embarking on this journey, and at the beginning of their journey that would kind of revitalize me as a 50-plus-year-old, probably bitter, jaded writer myself. Now, when I had started to have gaps in my career, I thought, okay, maybe I start this third act, maybe it becomes more like my midpoint. and so I did, after I got the MFA and I completed the program and started dipping my toes in the teaching water, I loved it. Like it was a total high for me. just kind of being that focal point for writers, and being able to guide them on their process of teaching them how the basics of screenwriting, and then kind of shepherding their projects forward. And then when I got the chance to meet Tanya, I mean, then it just felt like the perfect fit, and I was very grateful when she decided to bring me aboard on Script Anatomy.
Very, very cool. We're going to take a quick sponsor break right now, and then we're going to come back to talk all about the course at Script Anatomy. AVGearGuide.com uses state-of-the-art technology to bring new life to old films and videos, like the Lost Betty White series Pet Set, which they recently restored for its 50th anniversary. They can apply the same technology to your documentary, film and video archive, and family videos. Visit avgearguide.com for details. DrivingFootage.com provides 360-degree driving plates for film and TV. Over 14,000 clips are available for locations all around Southern California, with more areas coming soon. A fully equipped camera car with height-adjustable rig is available for custom shoots. Visit drivingfootage.com for details. Full disclosure, I do own both of these companies. By supporting them, you help me bring new in-person video interviews to you. And we're back. So you also teach a TV pilot lab, but because the TV spec pilot draft intensive is coming up soon, we'll talk about that today. According to the Script Anatomy site, it's for if you already have an outline for a TV spec script or pilot that you want to take to draft, or a draft that needs to be rewritten. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Ideally, it's the course you would take after televisionary, where you come out of televisionary with a completed outline, and then you kind of roll right in to the draft intensive class and turn that outline into a draft. But I've had plenty of students that just go right into draft intensive, not having televisionary. I don't necessarily recommend that per se, only because there's a lot of, especially if you've never. Let me rephrase. If you've written before, or you know the fundamentals of TV writing, then sure, I think you can go right into draft intensive. If you're brand new to TV writing, televisionary is of the utmost importance of just getting that foundation, knowing kind of the terminology, the meat of structure, and character development, and kind of fleshing out your world, doing all that earlier work before you get to the outline phase. Because in draft intensive, you start with an outline, so we kind of take that outline and hit the ground running. So there's not time really to kind of go back and rethink your characters and rethink the world of your show. Like, you really need to kind of have that all ready to go.
Very cool. And just to be clear, it could be drama or comedy. It could be a spec episode of a TV show or a spec pilot. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are certain classes on the site. Sometimes I'll teach a specifically comedy draft intensive. But I having worked in both comedy and drama, I feel, and having written both comedy and drama, I feel fairly comfortable teaching both. So I usually do a dual genre.
Very cool. And so there's a week of prep before time. Is that sort of when you connect with the student on their outline, and just what does that involve?
It's usually, I send out my welcome email, let them know kind of how the class is going to work. And yes, I say, okay, here's your first assignment, before we even meet each other on, in the virtual classroom or in the Script Anatomy space, is having your outline, right? And so some people might use that week to write their outline if they don't have the outline. And so if that's the case, then they'll send me emails like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a show, that's a dystopian, noir drama, whatever it may be. And then I will kind of give them feedback on that if they're looking for it, or, they might just go ahead and send in the outline, or spend that week working on the outline and turn that in.
Yeah. So what can a person do to set themselves up for success in this? It sounds like definitely having a good outline is a key, but what more than that?
I really think it's doing your homework, right? I think it's really aggressively thinking about your show, right? In televisionary, we spend a lot of time about, kind of doing the macro work of thinking about your characters and the world and the franchise of your show, and, how many seasons you could see it going, what are things you can, how do you envision the series ending, kind of more on like a macro level of the show itself. So once you've done that legwork, it makes it so much easier to kind of delve into the outline because you know the characters so well. You have an idea of what their arcs are going to be over the course of the series. Knowing what their want is, not just for the pilot, which will be what it is in your outline, but knowing what their goal or their want is for the series, right? Because those are oftentimes two very different things, or the pilot is the start of that goal and want for the series. So I think really not just blindly launching into an outline and without having really constructively thought about your characters in the world of your show in a really detailed sense.
And so this particular class it's 3 sessions with big breaks in between for writing. Can you talk a little bit about how those sessions are structured?
Yeah, so we meet 3 times, and then it's a 5-week class. We meet 3 times, and the off weeks is when, that it's usually the day we would normally meet is when the assignments turned in that week. So it just gives, because we are going from outline to ideally completed draft, it gives, a little bit more time for the writers to be able to turn out those pages. In terms of the structure of the class, the first class is the structure of every class is the first half is lecture. I'll talk about various tools that we teach at Script Anatomy, and then the second half of the class is very much treated like a writer's room, right? It's workshopping each other's work, pitching. The writer. I usually, depending on how many students I have in the class, I will divide up how much time per student that we have to kind of talk about each person's work, and then during that writer's portion of the workshop that is their time, they can use that however they choose. If they had a question about notes that they got, right, and they can pose that to the collective, to the writer's room, so to speak, or if they had an idea of how they wanted to fix something and they want to pitch that to the room, and then we can pile on that or say like, oh, that's good, but what if you did this instead, and kind of work through it that way. But that's the structure of each class: half lecture, half workshop. And I think the beauty of Script Anatomy, aside from having working writers teaching TV writing, is also that these workshop portions of the classes, you're not just getting notes from me, you're getting notes from eight of your peers, or 10 of your peers, or 12 of your peers, however many other students there are in the class. And so it really helps in the note-taking process to really see what stuff is bubbling to the surface of what's really not working in my story. Because that's usually the things that 3, 4, 5, 6 people will hit on, like, I don't know about your main character's arc. Then it makes it a lot easier to go back and be like, oh, okay, maybe I need to take a harder look at my character's arc and see what exactly isn't working about that.
And so does everybody send out their drafts ahead of time and then read each other's work before the class?
Yeah, so like the class I'm teaching right now, we meet on Wednesdays, right? So the first class, everybody sends in that outline beforehand, before we meet, usually a week before we meet, so that everyone has that week to read and email each writer individually notes on their piece. And then we'll meet for class, do lecture, and then we'll do a in-person workshop where that, like I said, that writer can address those notes that they received and kind of try to work through stuff. And then they'll have their next assignment. So in that class, once they have their outline and we've done the workshop on their outline, they can either choose to revise their outline if they got like a ton of notes on their outline and they don't feel comfortable launching into starting to write pages of the script. They can go back and revise their outline, or they can, if they the work is minimal on the outline, they can then move on to write the first half of the first draft, which would be the next assignment. And then that would be turned in the following Wednesday when we're not meeting. That would just be emailed to everyone, and then everyone has that next week to read and provide notes. And then the third Wednesday we're meeting, then we're giving notes on the revised outlines or the first half of the drafts, and then so on and so forth. And then the last assignment is either going to be those who did revised outlines turning in their first half, or those who did their first half turning in their second half of their scripts.
Very, very cool. Tell me about some of the success stories, and I don't mean just afterwards, but during the course, what kind of victories have you seen people have? Oh man,
it's pretty rewarding just working with writers of all shapes and sizes in terms of their abilities. I've had writers that have been writing for 10 years, and whether it's been trying their hand at short stories or novel writing, maybe this is their first time, or writing in the TV writing space, or writers that this is their first introduction to writing TV. I love the ones that it's their first introduction to writing TV, because I kind of love to see their eyes light up when they kind of things start clicking. And I think seeing a writer figure out a problem that's not working in their script and come out of that and through either through notes that I give or notes that they're getting through that collective workshop portion of the writer's room in class, and just seeing something that you can kind of just see them light up. And then you read their next stuff and you're like, oh, okay, they got it. And as writers, we've all been there. We've all been stuck on something on a story, and we just can't figure out what that low point is going to be at the end of Act 2 of my comedy pilot. And then when you finally click and find that, or like what my inciting incident is going to be, that's really going to make my script sing and feel really unique and different. And when they find that thing, it's so exciting, because you can feel it on the page. You can feel their passion coming through, when maybe before that the frustration was coming through a little bit more, right? Like they were kind of going through the motions, but they hadn't quite found it yet. And that's part of the challenge, I think, of Script Anatomy, is that we do move fast. So oftentimes, like, you can't be too precious on stuff, but that's how TV works, right? That TV writing is a very accelerated process.
Yeah. And
so I think it does take some of those newbie writers a little bit of time to kind of get their sea legs and figure it out. But it's, just seeing them kind of it all click together, and the wheels start working, and then see their writing just change dramatically is definitely my favorite success that I've seen happen. Is just it's very gratifying.
Very, very cool. I had a professor in university, Spanish professor, and he spoke very, very fast. And students would ask him, can you slow down so that I can understand you? And his answer was, this is how Spanish is spoken. You need to develop a fast ear.
Yeah.
And the application for TV writing is to a deadline. It's fast.
Yeah.
Like in an actual writer's room, you're assigned a draft. You don't get that much time.
No.
Typically it's a week. Theoretically it could be 2 weeks, but it's rarely 2 weeks.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, it depends on the show. It depends on the production schedule, where you are in the season. If you're up against it, timing wise. But yeah, typically on a comedy, you get a week to churn out. A Monday to Friday, essentially, to turn out a first draft. And then dramas, I think it could be anywhere from 10 to 14 days. But yeah, I mean, if it's crunch time, then you got to be able to adapt and be able to churn something out quicker than that. And that's also one of the things I say in my classes is I say, please meet your deadlines, right? It's one of the few things in this job that's within your control. Because ultimately, you can only do your best in the writer's room, try to pitch the best stuff, and we're all gonna pitch jokes that are gonna fall flat in the writer's room, and kind of not letting that get too much in your head. But meeting deadlines is something that you just need to be able to do, because it's the easiest way for a showrunner to not ask you back to a show.
Wow. Yeah, very cool. Well, what are some of the common mistakes that you see people doing?
I think, to me, when you get in a dialogue, I find that the most common mistake, and like one of my big headline notes that I give to writers, is read your dialogue out loud. Because I think, especially a lot of new writers, and I was guilty of this myself when I first started writing, because when I first tried my hand at screenwriting, I was coming right out of college, and I was so used to writing term papers, and so all of my dialogue, there were no contractions, right? It was all complete sentences, could not, would not, there, there is, and so it's stuff, but people don't talk like that. People talk in contractions, and so dialogue is the easiest way to be able to pick out an amateur writer, right? If the dialogue doesn't sound natural, and then on the flip side, if it sounds too precious and sounds overridden, you gotta find that fine line of making it sound dynamic, but also sounding like how human beings talk. And I find, and I still do it with all my scripts, is reading my dialogue out loud after I'm done. It's just, I think, the easiest way to hear it and be able to know, okay, that sounds normal-ish, or something how normal people would talk, and that's definitely I think, one of the things I try to infuse on people, and, I find a lot when first drafts come in is like, you got to read your dialogue out loud. In terms of other things, I think a lot of times it's not having a dynamic enough inciting incident, right? Because, I think that's how you separate yourself from the pack, right? Everyone says it's the cliche of like the first 10 pages are everything, but it's a cliche for a reason, because it's true, right? Your first 10 pages are everything. If you don't hook somebody in those first 10 pages, and I don't care if you're writing a comedy or a drama or, a genre piece, whatever it might be, if you don't have something that draws someone in immediately, they are going to throw it. No, we throw scripts in the trash anymore because everyone reads them on iPads, but they're going to X out of the window of your PDF, and they're not going to continue reading. So really making sure you put a lot of emphasis on those first 10 pages and making sure that it's dynamic, it's exciting, it's, causing a reader to lean in and want to know what's going to happen next. You're establishing your main character in a really dynamic, interesting ways with both their flaws and their redeemable traits, and kind of doing all these things, having this perfect storm of having those first 10 pages sing is usually a thing I try to work really hard with my students on, because I think that sets them up the most for success moving forward.
Very, very cool. And on the flip side, what makes a script stand out in a good way?
Well, definitely, having that opening be something great. I think the opening, the beginning of a script and the end of the script, I think, are the most important, right? Obviously, it's all important. It all needs to be good, but you want to start out with a bang, and you want to end leaving a great taste in that reader's mouth, right? Where they just, they get to fade out and they're like, wow, this is something. So, I think even some of the professional writers are known to, they have a great opening to something that's draws you in immediately, and then it kind of fizzles out in the third act, right? Or it kind of the ending's kind of lackluster. So I think really emphasizing your beginnings and your ends and making sure that those are really tight and really engaging, I think are really of tantamount importance for sure.
Very, very cool. And so what about you do teach one other course at Script Anatomy? Is it just one?
No, I teach I teach at least two. I teach televisionary, and then I also teach a pilot lab.
And tell me just nuts and bolts of that pilot lab. What do you do in that one?
Yeah, so the pilot lab is definitely it's that one is more. It's almost even more accelerated in a certain way. It's 6 sessions, right? So, and you meet every week. It's not, the one-on, one-off style, but you go from idea to finish first draft in those 6 weeks. So it's intense, right? So that's definitely one where we don't have time to go over the basics. There's just no time to do that. So you really, the way that class starts out is the prep work is the writers all kind of send in 2 or 3 ideas that they're milling about in their head, and I will, try to steer them in a certain direction. Usually I do that by asking like, which one are you most passionate about? Because that's the one I'm going to want to read, because that's the one that's going to be the most interesting on the page. But, so that's the prep work. And then there, you go from that to beat sheet. But what's kind of fun and different about the pilot lab with the beat sheet is that you're actually pitching out your story beats. Like you're doing, if you had note cards up on the wall, you'd be going beat by beat. When we do the physical class, that's how we do it. I have everyone hang their story beats on the whiteboard, and then they go through, from teaser to, end of show, and just kind of go beat by beat. And so it kind of flexes a new muscle that a lot of people that, have maybe taken the other classes haven't done, which is that getting up in front and pitching, which is a whole other art form to have to kind of gain a sense of in this business. So they go through, they pitch their beats. We give them, myself and the rest of the students give notes on the beats. They go through, rewrite those, and then they will, based on those notes, will then move on to the outline, write the outline, turn that in, get notes on that, and then move on to first draft, and then do the first half of the first draft, second half of the first draft. But it's and then it's just a more compressed. It's like basically putting televisionary and draft intensive together in terms of the material you're churning out. But definitely televisionary you get all the nuts and bolts that you won't get in that you'll get a very abbreviated version of in like the first lecture of the pilot lab.
Yeah, very, very cool. I am a big fan of those, especially if you've got a little bit of writing experience already. It can really put the fire under your butt to get a draft written in a very short amount of time.
And I get a bunch of students that, they are writers. Like, they might have sold something before. They might have, been staffed on a show before, and they like taking the script anatomy classes just for that reason, because it does hold them accountable for getting, a new sample churned out in a short amount of time. Because, I think we're all guilty of it at times. When you don't have that whip being cracked on you, you can sit at home and kind of dilly-dally and, not really sit down at the computer. But the deadlines of these courses definitely force you to have to get the work done.
Very, very cool. So one question I'm asking everybody towards the end is, outside of Just Right, which obviously is very important, what do you think is the most important career advice that you would give somebody who's starting out and wants to be a TV writer?
I always say the industry is not as big as you think it is. And so it's really important to check your ego at the door and not be above anything, obviously within reason, but, not be above the grunt work. If you get a PA job and you're having to get lunch and get coffees for people, but you think like, well, I'm better than this. I'm a writer. Like, I don't want to go get people their lunch. Yeah, well, that's kind of the way it works, right? That's, if you do go that path. And so I think in the beginning I had a chip on my shoulder coming out of college, because here I was a film major graduate from a UC, and I thought, I was going to come and take be the next Spielberg or what have you. And it was humbling. And I think I, had to kind of take a step back and reevaluate my attitude on stuff and know, like, this industry isn't as big, and people talk, and you can get a reputation of yourself, and it's really easy to burn bridges right off the bat. So it's really important to kind of come into it with the right attitude, be excited to learn, to be a sponge, right? I think that my favorite part about being a writer's assistant was just being a fly on the wall of the process. It's an experience that most writers or most people aren't privy to get to just be in the writer's room while imagine being in the writer's room on Breaking Bad when they were figuring out that first season. Like, that's so exciting to see how they're connecting all those dots. So I think for sure, checking your ego at the door and just realizing that the business is not as big as it is, and people talk, and you don't want to burn any bridges. And I think the other thing that I will say, and I think this is more applicable now than ever, is don't compare yourself to what you're seeing on social media, right? And I think that's it's a trap that I find myself falling into too, right? You see people posting like, oh, I just got staffed on this show, or I just sold my show, and you think like, well, why not me? What am I doing wrong, right? Everyone's path is different. You don't know any of the circumstances about what happened to that person and that led to that opportunity, right? So don't compare yourself. You'll drive yourselves crazy. You'll, potentially fall into some deep, dark depression and want to give up writing. And that's, the last thing that you want to be doing. So, I think it's really important to kind of take a step back, turn off the doom scrolling of the social media, and, definitely just write, but not just write, like go for a hike, go do something else, just don't be consumed with what's going on social media all the time. As important as it is to just write, it's important to kind of get away from it all and kind of have that peace of mind as well, and just know, it happens for everyone at different portions. Hence, 8+ years to get to the writers table. So
very, very cool. And speaking of social media, you have a very, very easy to remember Twitter handle, Harry Pizza Bagel.
Yeah. I mean, it's common knowledge that a pizza bagel is an Italian Jew, and so that is what I am. I am an Italian Jewish man, and I am a hairy man, which you can tell by my face, but you can imagine, the rest of it matches the face. And so, it felt like somebody on Twitter as a comedy writer trying to, make a name for themselves. I figured I'd go with the ridiculous, silly Twitter handle. So yeah, Harry Pizza Bagel it is.
Very cool. Well, make sure to follow Harry Pizza Bagel on Twitter. And I noticed you rep by Brandy Rivers.
Yeah.
I actually interviewed her in episode 48.
Oh, really?
So if anybody wants to learn about management, she's actually, when I interviewed her, she was a manager, but now she's an agent.
No, it was the other way around. She used to be an agent, now she's a manager.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn about representation, episode 48 is a great one to check out. And make sure to visit scriptanatomy.com to find out all of the courses that Aaron is teaching. There's many of them, and you need to book early because they fill up very quickly. So you can sift when you go on the course calendar. Just choose Aaron, and you'll find out all of the courses that are coming up that he's teaching. And definitely you want to book the TV Spec Pilot Draft Intensive, which is coming right up. And if you can't make it into this one, there will be another one repeating later in the year. But thanks so much, Aaron, for taking your time. Sounds like some really, really exciting work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Gray. This was a pleasure sitting down with you.
Please follow me on Twitter for the latest updates. @GrayJones is my handle. Make sure to bookmark tvwriterpodcast.com and scriptmag.com. You can find the video version of this podcast at iTunes, Podbean, and on YouTube. Make sure you do subscribe to all these places. Audio only, you can find us at iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or Pandora. And on Instagram, you can follow @TVWriterPodcast. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.